Hey guys, today we're going to be going over the USACO 2016 December contest silver problem, cities and states. So for those of you who haven't read the problem yet, basically the problem gives you n cities and your job is to find the number of special pairs between the cities that were given. So first of all, what is a special pair? So in a city that's given, we were given the city and the state of that city. So if we name the one city to be C1 and their state to be S1, and then we name the other city to be C2 and their state to be S2, then we have a special pair if the first two letters of C1 matches with S2 and the first two letters of C2 matches with S1. In this case, Miami, Florida and Flint, Michigan are a special pair because MI matches with this MI and FL matches with this FL. However, there is one exception, and the exception is that no two cities can be a special pair if they're from the same state. For example, let's say there was a city named Flower, Florida, and a city named Fly, Florida. Well, even though they all have the same first two letters, they're not a special pair because they're from the same state. So how do we go about solving this problem? We're given a list of cities that can go up to 10 to the 5th power. Now, the most obvious solution would be to check every possible pair and check if every possible pair is a special pair and then count the number of special pairs. So by checking every pair, we have to cycle through every element, and then for each element, we're going to check from this element to every other element. So we're going to have to check Miami, Florida to every other element. And we also have to do the same for the next element and the next, and so on. And even though that would seem straightforward, that would give us a complexity of 10 to the 5th times 10 to the 5th, giving us 10 to the 10, which is way too slow for this problem. And then you would only get half the test cases right. This wouldn't be a full solution. So how do we count the number of pairs in such a large array? Well, the secret is not to go over every pair, but to add on multiple pairs at a time. So each time I'm going to be adding a lot of pairs instead of every time adding one pair. So how do we add multiple pairs every time? How do we look at multiple pairs? Well, if we look back to our example here, we can see, let's just take Miami, Florida, for example. So what would be a city that would be a special pair with Miami, Florida? Well, we obviously want the state name to be Michigan, right? So MI. So we have to have the state name as MI. Well, what about the city? Well, for this one, the state name is FL. So the city obviously has to start with FL. And the city can have many different letters after the first two letters. But what is important here isn't the letters that are after the city. What is important here is that the city has to begin with FL, and then the state has to be MI. So then this makes us think there should be many of these, even though the city names are different. So how do we count all of the possible cities all at once? Well, we can use something called a map. A map basically can store a key and a value. In this case, we want to store the key of the city name plus the state name. So for a city like this, we would store it as FLMI. City, the first two letters of the city is the first two letters of the key, and then the state name is going to be the last two letters of the key. And in the value section, we're just going to store the number of the cities that matches this condition. So let's say we would have 2 cities that matches this condition. Now when we look at Miami, Florida, we won't be cycling through all the cities anymore. We would go straight to the key of FLMI, and we would see we have 2 cities that matches with this condition. Therefore, Miami, Florida must be a special pair with each of these 2 cities. So all we need to do is we need to add these 2 cities to our count. Okay, let me give you a better example of this with the test case. So for the first test case, we're going to map everything by the first 2 city name, the first 2 letters in the city and the state name. So for Miami, Florida, we'll have MIFL, and then its value is going to be 1. For the next one, we have DATX, and its value is going to be 1, because we only have 1 of these. The next one is FLMI, and the value is going to be 1. And say we had a bunch of these, and every time we make the key from the city that we're given, and if it's already existing, we're going to add one more to that. If it's not existing, we're going to create a new key value pair. So this could be potentially be 2 if there was another city called Fly, Michigan. Then this would become 2. And after we've created this map, we can cycle through every element in the map, and we will get the value of the element, but then we can reverse the state and the city. So for MIFL, we would have FLMI. Then we can search for this key in the map. Then we will get this element, which would have a value of 2. So this would have 1 times 2, giving us 2 special pairs. If we do this for everything in the map and then divide the result by 2, we will get the final answer. The reason we divided by 2 is because when we're checking for this element, we already counted this element and this element. However, when we go to this element, we're actually counting this again. So that's why we have to divide it by 2. Okay, let's go look at the code for this example. So first of all, I am gonna read in the number of cities that we have. Next, I'm gonna create a map, and the map is gonna store a string as the key and an integer as the value. So now I'm gonna cycle n times. Each time I'm gonna get the city and the state from the input. Then I'm going to use CS, and I'm just going to say city dot substring 0 to 2. So that basically gets the first two letters of the city plus the state. So this will get us our key. And all we need to do is pass that key into the map and increment it by 1 to create the map. Next, we're going to make a result variable. We're going to cycle through each element in the map. For each element, we're going to make it as city and state. We're going to separate it. So city will have the first two letters, and then state is going to have the last two letters. Now here's a special case, because if the city is equal to the state, which is the example I showed you here, when flower Florida and fly Florida, the city is equal to the state, and then these two are from the same state, and they're technically a special pair. However, the problem is not allowing it. So we will need to make a special case for this one and say we're just gonna continue to the next element. Next, if it's not a special state, we're gonna add the state plus the city, so reversing the key. We're going to get that value and multiply it by the current value of the element. And we're also going to cast it to long, just because it could be pretty big. Finally, we write out the result and divide it by 2. That's it for this problem. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next USACO problem.